Good morning, everyone. It's Joe Waxman. I'm back with another mini reading. This morning, I wanted to take a look at Pablo Picasso, probably one of the most renowned, best artists of the modern era. Um, he founded so many different styles and of art. I went to art school, so I was always looking at his paintings and his art, his creations. Always admired him so much. So let's get started. Before we begin, go to macroastrology.com, check out my website, book a reading if you want. Also like, subscribe, and share if you enjoy this content. Share my screen. All right, Pablo Picasso, October 25th, 1881, 11:15 p.m. at night in Malaga, Spain. Right. So, Leo ascendant with Sun in the fourth house in Scorpio. So Scorpio Sun is very intense, very deep. I'm not going to cover the psychological aspects too fully here, but we all know Scorpio. It's just it's the most intense sign, deep, secretive, psychological. But what's interesting is that it is the fourth house. And I just want to make a quick note here. Often we think about like creativity coming from the fifth house being Leo's house and the 12th house being Pisces' house. But fourth house is also a creative house, being the dwelling of the moon, the mother, the creative aspect of the feminine, creative feminine aspect, right? Pregnancy, breasts, all that. It has a lot of creativity, and it rules the nighttime. Here's the daytime, here's the nighttime, and often artists and creative types find inspiration at night. So let's not rule out fourth house as a house of creativity. But if you know a little bit about Picasso, he was talented from a young age. His father, the son, was a painter. And Picasso started painting very early on. And his father recognized his talent and realized that he couldn't compete with Picasso. He couldn't well, they were both Picasso. He couldn't compete with his son, Pablo. So he gave up painting. I mean, that's pretty dramatic, right? He realized that Pablo was the real talent and that he was a nobody compared to his son, Pablo. Which is interesting. The dispositors of the fathers in the 12th house, so there's something going on there. I mean, that is a creative house in Cancer. So that's an interesting look into that. And the sun is a creative aspect, rules Leo, the original fifth house ruler in the natural zodiac. So wherever there's sun, there's life. So sun in the fourth house definitely has a lot of creativity, depending on the sign, aspects, whatnot. Right. So the most prominent feature of Picasso's chart is this huge stellium of outer planets in the 10th house and moving into the 11th house. And also the south node here in Gemini. So Gemini rules communications, lower mind, intellect, writing, speaking, but also the hands and skills of the hands. So artistic skills, not artistic creativity, but artistic skills are ruled by Gemini and the third house, right? So South Node shows what we came in this world with. So right away we can see there's tons of early success here. Taurus rules beauty, so that's more of an aesthetic, right? If we have artistic skills and the aesthetic of beauty, then we have a great potential to make art, right? And then we have the 10th house, Lord Aries, in the 12th house. 12th house is the house of creativity. Cancer, also general creativity, the feminine side of creativity, as opposed to Leo, the masculine side. The 12th house, Pisces, is the most, I would say, the most potently creative. So right away, we know that he is going to have something to do with foreign lands, his career, foreign lands, artistic creativity, potentially even spirituality with the 12th house, Mars. Now, you know, Mars is in debility here. So make of that what you will, but I mean, that in itself is not so strong. But if we look at the 3rd house, we have Venus in Libra. It's in domicile. And, you know, a planet in domicile, I've heard it said that it's stronger than a planet in exaltation. So Venus, the planet of beauty and aesthetics and artistic creativity, is in the 3rd house of skills, right, in Libra. So this is very powerful. Now he has an intercepted house here with Virgo, the 2nd and 3rd house. Its ruler is in the 4th, but it's coming to the 5th house cusp. So I see it within 15 degrees, or at least 10 degrees of the cusp of the next house. It's strongly influencing that house. And because it's in the same sign, that's very 5th house oriented. So he's bringing Virgo energy and 2nd and 3rd house energy, so artistic skills, into the house of creativity. And 2nd house would be wealth, the ability to make wealth out of creativity, family, knowledge, what else? Teaching skills. But what's interesting is that it's Virgo. So Mercury rules Virgo. So he's bringing Virgo skills. And Virgo is great with, in artistry, in the ability to be critical and have like that good critical eye, being, you know, determining what is good and what's not good. Virgo is not really the sign of creativity. It's the sign of the critic, the art critic. And that's necessary for any good artist, because you can't just have creativity, because there's no way to break it down. You need the ability to edit it and to cut and paste and to sort out what's good and what's not. You need that critical eye. And Virgo is the quintessential critic. So he's bringing this knowledge, the 2nd, and the skills of the hands, the 3rd, into the 5th house cusp, right? Moon is in the 5th, North Node's in the 5th, in Sagittarius. So a very creative moon. North Node depicts later life. So I'll come back to that because that's interesting. But what's really fascinating about Picasso's chart is this early rise to fame and this 10th house in Taurus, right? The 11th house cusp is Venus. So the 11th house cusp is in the 3rd house in domicile, so very strong. But look at all the aspects on this 10th house moving into the 11th house. You got all these outer planets, Saturn, Neptune, Chiron, Jupiter, and Pluto, all retrograde in a row. So retrograde brings a passivity. So if Saturn was direct, then it would have a much stronger influence on all these. It would have a much more limiting aspect because it's more direct. It's when a planet is retrograde, it has introspective quality. It's like if somebody says something and they're really strong about it, like do this and this now, and then later they go, oh, you know what? You know, I got to rethink the whole thing. That's like a planet going retrograde. They're like, so just hold off, just wait a little while. I'm rethinking, I'm reflecting, I'm figuring out what to do. I'm just not sure of myself. So planets in retrograde are self-doubting, reflective, internalized, internally thinking, not forward moving, not forwardly progressing. So this Saturn is not controlling all these other planets. He's unsure of himself, and in fact, they're all unsure of themselves. And an interesting side note, Picasso, even though he appeared like the master and so confident, Picasso himself was unsure of himself. He produced a painting, and I can't remember what it was called, but he was so progressive and so forward thinking with his art that sometimes he second guessed himself and would remove a painting because he thought it was just like, wouldn't be accepted by his artist peers. And he was very 11th house oriented. He was part of a group of artists, as a lot of artists were, and it mattered to him what his fellow peer artists thought. So he removed one of his amazing paintings. It's one of the one with where he was influenced by African face sculptures. Again, 12th house Mars influence. He was very influenced by the African Mars influence, and that the long faces, and the one with the woman where she's like this. There were several women. Anyway, I forget what it's called. Details elude me sometimes. He withdrew that, yeah, because of that reflective, self-doubting quality. But this 10th house is so powerful in Taurus, the planet, the sign of beauty, the sign of sensory beauty, right? Look at all the aspects. Mars gets a sextile. Uranus gets a trine. And by the way, that's why he was so progressive, this Uranus influence. He was so everything, right? All these outer planets, so powerful. Venus gets a trine to the outer ones, South Node and Pluto. So the South Node trine was why he was able to rise to early success, because anywhere near the 10th house is going to have great visibility. So a strong 10th house, and then 9th house, 11th house planets that are close to the 10th house, extremely visible, right? So the South Node, even though it's in the 11th house, it's success of career, right? And because the 10th house is so strong that he was able to rise to early success, and he gets a trine to a South Node from this Venus in domicile in the 3rd house, house of skills. Venus is beauty, so he's merging beauty and skills together. And by the way, this really describes his early painting career. His early painting career was much more Venusian and Geminian, meaning that skills and beauty. It was just like he was this phenomenally good, skilled painter, and beautiful, like the Rose period, the Blue period, before the Cubist stuff, right? It was very Venus and Gemini, just beautiful, like phenomenally beautiful. And that's that Venus in domicile in Libra in the 3rd house, South Node in Gemini trine, right? Then you have the sun aspecting, because all planets cast a shadow or a projection or look at the sign opposite to them. That's a Vedic theory, but it makes sense. I mean, I'm sure some Westerners use it too. So this 10th house is not only that, but it's the sun, Mercury, moon. They're all looking at the 10th and 11th houses, right? And all of these planets, right? So his visibility was just phenomenal, right? It was phenomenal. It was absolutely, he had intense fame his whole life, as opposed to somebody like Vincent van Gogh, who did not have any fame in his life, not until he died. And so he didn't know how good he was, right? Well, he knew on a personal level, but he never got any recognition. So that's terrible. So there's different ways it can go, and we can see that. But I just want to take a look at this cluster of planets and all the the projection, all the shadow looks, polar points, polarity points on the 10th house in Taurus. And then just want to show you an example. Guernica, right? You can see that. Can you not see that? This cluster of these powerful, intense outer planets and all the other planets, they're all looking. All the planets are looking at that 10th and early 11th house, right? It's amazing. And this is just one example. You can see it in so many of his paintings where it's just like this weirdness, this absurdity, this collection of just intense absurdity. And he puts it together beautifully. Like you couldn't imagine such a mess being such a masterpiece. And that's why he was a master, a modern art master, really. Like if anyone else tried to do this, it would just be an ugly, you know, pile of garbage. It takes a master to do something like this. So absurd, so weird. There's that bull. He always loved bulls, right? That's the Taurus, right? Horse, Sagittarius moon. Okay. Here's all the planets and all of it, right? It's this weird cluster of planets and everything looking at it. Now, if you know anything about his art in his later life, he always wanted to paint like a child, which is interesting because he was so skilled. As a child, he painted and drew like a master, total master. But as he got older, he wanted his art, he was so successful already and so skilled, he could just let down his guard. Like he wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. He was the master, right? And then he tried to paint more and more like a child. And we can see that with North Node conjunct Moon in Sag. Why? Because Mercury, Gemini, represents the skills of the hand, but also the small mind. It's concerned with details, right? And his early paintings were very beautiful in their details. Phenomenal drawing, phenomenal painting. And then as he got older, he wanted to get bigger and bigger. Like, you know, Jupiter rules Sag. So like, just forget about the details. He was going for a spirit of something. And it's in the 5th house. And it's the moon's here. The moon is the ruler of the 12th house. And yeah, so I don't have any examples of that, but I mean, Mercury's still here, so he still had the great ability to draw well. But yeah, if you'll know what I mean if you go and look at any of his later paintings in life. It was much more expressive, which would be 5th house, feeling oriented, which is moon, and Sagittarius, which is, you know, philosophical, less concerned with the details, more big-minded, right? And North Node represents what he his second half of his life, where he becomes obsessed and hungry. And also North Node conjunct Moon. North Node conjunct Moon is they're hungry for emotional satisfaction, and they never actually get satisfied. So whatever house and sign it's in, they're intensely hungry and searching for this emotional satisfaction. And him, it was this expression, 5th house Sagittarius expression, this big-minded expression that he couldn't. So he's always like pushing himself to go further and further and further, and never really getting what he wanted. This childlike innocence of the 5th house, right? 5th house is childhood education. So yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. But you know, very obvious, this 10th house, extremely powerful 10th house, and 3rd house, and the nodes, everything, just creative genius. Amazing stuff. All right, well, that's pretty much it. One more thing, I didn't notice anything unusual about his planets. Mars is a little out of bounds, 23, 46. There's no stationary direct, just those bunch of retrograde planets up here. Mars out of bounds in Cancer in the 12th sign. You know, Mars debilitated in Cancer will not be good for being physically adept. Like, you know, his Martian qualities might have taken a hit, but it might have boosted his creativity, right? Because the Cancer quality, because, you know, even Bach had a debilitated Mercury, but it was next to the exalted Venus in Pisces. So, you know, Bach might not have been the logical in the traditional sense, but he certainly was fantastic with music theory. And, you know, this Mars here might not have, you know, given Picasso the physical edge to be like great at sports or anything, but it certainly gave him the ability to, you know, have that emotional creativity and passion from the 5th house, from the 12th house, sorry. And its dispositor is in the 5th house. And one more thing, if we do the final dispositor, if we look at final dispositor, it's a way of tracking like how the energy moves. You just go find, you know, you just trace the planets. So like ascendant, we go to Sun, then Mars rules Scorpio, so we go to Mars, then Moon rules Cancer, so we go to Moon. Jupiter rules Sag, so we go to Jupiter. And then Venus rules Taurus, so we go to Venus. Venus in Libra in the 3rd house is his final dispositor. So that's where the energy ends up. That's where all the energy collects. It's like a river where it finally winds up in the ocean. So that's another way of figuring things out of how the energy is going to move in a chart. 3rd house, Venus in domicile, extremely powerful artistic skills. Enough said, right? Okay. Anyway, that's pretty much it for Picasso. I love his work. I hope you do too. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, share. Check out my website, macroastrology.com, to book a reading. And thanks. I'll see you guys soon. Probably tomorrow. All right. Bye-bye.